point that you said several times is not wait till the state has finished the process, but how to give them earlier clues about what is going to be expected of them before they actually submit the nomination. How to have an earlier process and clearer standards. And again, IUCN can play a very valuable role in that. The last issue that I think has been touched on a couple of times, I think is very complex, is the relationship between culture and nature. The World Heritage Convention does not divide the sites between cultural sites and natural sites. That has emerged over time as a practice. Very few indigenous people see that as a real distinction. That's a Western European Judeo-Christian concept, that nature and culture are separate from each other. But it's also not a reality. And just for me, I was at Bodh Gaya last year in Bihar, and I looked at Bodh Gaya as a cultural site. The environmental management of Bodh Gaya is shocking, to the point where the hotels are now drawing out of the sewage water into their hotel system. So I think there's a very big question, not just about how to include culture in the natural sites, but who is the one looking at the natural management of the cultural sites?
Nigel, they're all very useful interventions, but they're actually also quite complex to put into a simple statement. I do think, I suspect, can I just gauge in the room that there's basically is there a broad endorsement or any disagreement that we should be, in a sense, supporting the whole notion of the recognition of the rights of Indigenous people in all stages, through nomination, through to the consideration by the World Heritage Committee right into the full management. That should be, that the rights of Indigenous and local people should be properly incorporated into that. Is that, yes? A simple statement.
Yeah, it will be very brief. My name is Khan Murshid. I'm from a small NGO in Bangladesh. And the point that I'd like to make is that my background is in human rights. So to me, it's sort of a no-brainer that people have to be at the heart of development. And the fact that it's still a matter that's debated in the way that we're debating it is somewhat shocking to me. This is my first convention that I've come to. But it seems to me that unless we're able to make these sites relevant for the people who depend on these natural resources, we're doing a great disservice. I mean, it's not about who are we developing for, who are these sites for, who's going to appreciate them, if not the very people who live within them and make their livelihood from these areas. So I think it's something that we need to home in on and to put people in the very center of our thinking, both in terms of protection as well as in terms of identifying sites and so on. So indigenous peoples, tribal peoples, local communities have to be empowered to connect with all the agencies that are working in these areas. And certainly they have to have some kind of a voice in the decision-making process. So that's all.
Hannah?
Hannah Joyreth from the National Environmental Law Association in Australia. Could I suggest that we ask the IUCN to take a one IUCN approach to this? In the Commission on Environmental Law and the Environmental Law Centre, there's been work done on the non-regression principle, which is that we shouldn't be backtracking from established principles. And in the international human rights field, there have been decisions over decades on the rights of Indigenous and local communities, the rights to culture, the rights to property, the rights to family, the rights to livelihood, etc. Daryl Posey did a lot of work on this, the late Daryl Posey, and the international jurisprudence is there, both in treaty law and customary international law. So the environmental law part of the IUCN, I think, needs to be better engaged in underpinning and safeguarding the progress that has been made and needs to be made better and more comprehensively. And I'm just worried and concerned to hear that there's a sense that you need to specifically articulate these standards in a conservation convention. They exist already. Human rights should be mainstreamed across the UN system, and that that's often recognised. So why are we saying, no, we have to go back to reinvent the wheel inside the convention. I just think that's a very retrograde step, and we could use this as a case study for the non-regression principle.
Okay. Thank you, Hannah. But look, I think we've got 10 minutes, and we could obviously have a lot. This is a huge debate, and there are, can I say, at least 6, I think it is, other sessions that will discuss this specific area in detail. So this wasn't really, the idea here was not to have a detailed discussion about Indigenous rights. Obviously, it's a big discussion, and it should come out of the conference, the Congress as a whole. But I don't think in our 10 minutes left, we won't discuss anything else if we keep going around. I think the feeling I'm getting is that we do need, or we would be entitled to say, that this meeting strongly endorsed the notion of human rights considerations being properly integrated into all aspects of the World Heritage Convention. Is it really critical? Well, I've got 2 people who are saying it's really critical. Well, try and be... I'll be
very short.
Deemed a very bad chair. Go on.
Yeah, I'm Sylvie Ouellet, working for GIZ in DRC Congo. A point very complementary. It is a support to the government, in the local government especially. I know that they have effort doing example in DRC for decentralization, but a lot of time the negotiation or the link with IUCN or UNESCO on the field is due with the central government. And I just think that we have to focus a little bit more on the local government, also community are important, but also the local people, and they are totally missing knowledge, understanding what's going on about all the challenge we're talking here. They have a lot of program on that, but we need to focus on that.
I take your point. Again, that might come back to the resourcing, though, of IUCN. Very quickly.
Very quick. Justin Kenrick, Forest People's Programme. I think what I was hearing was that human rights, we all know that those are central. And the point I don't want to lose was the point from the back, which was how do we link that with the need to keep the standards that you're describing?
Yes.
And the link you were making, as I understood it, was that we need to look back at the historical injustices that have been part of the process of creating many of these sites, and link with and ally with local people and ally with Indigenous people to ensure that these areas are protected for them and in support of them in relation to the kind of moves that we're hearing from the front. So that's about addressing injustices that we all know were wrong, but making that explicit and making that alliance explicit.
Or perhaps that can be included in that point of addressing past injustices. Look, could I go on to just one thing that did come out of so many presentations, the World Heritage Watch and others, which is the maintenance of standards, the ensuring of integrity of processes, the fact that, for example, advisory bodies' advice is not overturned. Does anybody want to speak to that or choose that as something that they would like as a message from this forum? Does the silence indicate simply that everybody agrees, or please?
Linda Manson with the Mama Foundation. I certainly agree with the idea that we need to maintain the standards for the convention, and I think there are a couple of things at play that keep coming up that put the designation at risk. And I think we've talked about all of those things, and my plea to you on this and the other points that we've discussed is to not water them down to motherhood statements. I think we can all agree on the culture points that have been made and the need to recognize and integrate Indigenous rights. I think we are all alarmed at the politicization of the process and the slipping of the standards, but please, if you send a message, send something strong. Don't say something that's, oh, we think blah, 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 blah. I don't see any point in doing that. So I'm alarmed at what I've heard previously, reinforced by what I've heard today. So please send a strong message.
Well, I think that's very good. I think that's the intention of the motion, of course, which is quite a strong message in itself, and we're in a sense only backing that up. So, okay, so we're calling for the integrity of the processes and also the proper respect for the opinions of the advisory bodies. Yes? I'm deeming that
Yeah.
supported.
Yes.
Okay. I think the other area that I think was very clear, particularly in Jessica and her team's presentation, is this excellent concept of constructive support. And Tim also raised it as a potential stronger role for IUCN and its family, in that, it's fine to declare World Heritage Areas, and we've clearly got a role in that, but we don't want IUCN to have a role at the World Heritage Committee meetings. Surely we can do a lot better than that. And then we do better than that. I mean, in truth, we are more involved. But how can we express that simply as supporting that very constructive role, that we're supporting the IUCN World Heritage Unit to be properly resourced to do that, that we're, in a sense, asking IUCN to mobilise its components to support World Heritage declarations, but also critically management, identification of threats, and mobilising assistance on the ground. Please.
Just to say, to be more clear about standards, what is expected of the state when they're doing the process of the nomination, that's where they seem to fall down. They've got one idea in their head of what the nomination needs to be, but if IUCN gives them the clues in advance, at the moment, IUCN's doing a fantastic job, I believe, but it's not consistent. The different nominations come to the IUCN desk. If we have someone available for the social assessment side, we recruit them in, but we haven't been consistent about that. So we need to figure out what are our standards inside IUCN, make sure we mobilize the union to have that all ready and ready to go, and communicate both the principles of those standards and then also the actual site assessment information back to the state parties before the nomination goes through. So I think there is some more homework to be done inside IUCN, and World Heritage is very interested to do that, but we, the commissions and the other parts of the IUCN, we have to be able to get that straightened out.
Okay. Are there any more comments on that? Peter.
Yeah, hi. I'm Peter Shady. I work with the IUCN program on World Heritage. I think this issue of mobilising IUCN more completely in terms of support of World Heritage is a very good issue, a key issue. The question is how to do that. And I think the reality, again, is that IUCN sends some pretty confusing messages out there. Nigel's point is right. But there are cases where some parts of IUCN will give advice in one direction, and then the advisory body role kicks in and the advice goes in the opposite direction. So it's no wonder that people are confused out there. One of the suggestions I would make is that we need to start thinking about the different functions that IUCN can play in World Heritage. One of those is this whole issue of strategy and standards, I think is one dimension. A second one is the issue of upstream support.
Yeah, that's really
a function there. And the third one is really this issue of the strict role as an advisory body, which is, let's face it, something of a judge and jury type function. And I think we could be a lot clearer in how we define those different roles and the different parts of the IUCN world that can help fulfill that. We've had experience where some of the IUCN regional officers have been able to play a different sort of role, a facilitating role, working with members, working with states parties, and trying to emphasise the difference in that role to the role that the IUCN plays as advisory body through the World Heritage Panel and all of that mechanism.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to have to wrap it up. I just did have one other thing, which was whether or not this group as a whole wish to express in any way the support for the development that happened at St. Petersburg of the NGO community, the World Heritage Watch, as a way in which civil society can be more involved and draw attention to these problems, perhaps in a way that some of the state parties cannot do.
To brainstorm a little bit, the last time I went to the World Heritage Committee in 2004, I think it was very palpable how full the room was during the nominations. The room's bursting at the seams, the corridor comes. When it comes to state of conservation, half the people are out seeing the sites. That's kind of to make it sort of make it sound bad, but I think if IUCN is involved in state of conservation, what's stopping IUCN coming up with an amber light? If the danger listing is a red light, and IUCN can come up with a green listing for well-managed sites to incentivize the ones that are working well, why can't it push the button and have an amber light? And you don't have to wait for the committee to push the red light button.
Well, I think this is what I was getting at, though. I think this is what I was suggesting, that a properly resourced unit within IUCN will have the capacity to do that and perhaps mobilise parts of our community to assist with that early warning, but also not just early warning, hey, there's a problem, but also early responses. They may be able to mobilise early responses that actually head off ending up with a declaration in danger. We are going to have to wrap up. I didn't get any kind of nods or winks or anything about World Heritage Watch.
Why don't you ask it?
Can I have a straw
or
poll?
something?
Who would like to in some way express support for the fact that there is a World Heritage Watch body now? Sure. It's about 3/4 of the room, and clearly there are some people who, for whatever reason, roles or whatever, are not putting up their hands. I think we could say the majority without saying everybody. Okay, look, I think, I'm not sure that we really got there brilliantly in that last flourish, but we had an absolutely fantastic session of really, really committed people on this incredibly important part of the IUCN agenda and roles, and I would like you to thank all those speakers once again very warmly. Thank you. Tim has one last message before you leave the room.
I've got two last messages. One, I just would like Peter Larson and Mariam Ali to stand up just so people can see. So just to introduce, Mariam works with me in the program. And is the person who is the architect for what Terence has just christened the IUCN Amber Light, I think, to this system of conservation outlook, which we will start to roll out and we'll talk more and more about. But so apart from me, Mariam is another person to contact in terms of the global program. And Peter is a consultant who's worked with us to do a review of the evaluation process that, as we currently operate it in relation to communities and rights, and establish a learning by doing mechanism, which we will be unpacking in particular on the 10th of September. So there's a series of workshops on the 10th around World Heritage, the links between nature and culture, rights, and that whole agenda. So we'll be able to unpack that in considerable detail there. The second was just to let you know, at 9 a.m. on the 9th of September, which is 999, which is the emergency number in the UK, which is sort of in tune with the discussion. We have a session for how you can get involved in the processes we operate. It's one of the Conservation Campus sessions, and it's at the Lottie Hotel, so it's not here. There are still a few places left on that, so if anybody has had their interest sufficiently piqued by this session that you would like to come and interact with us on how does the evaluation work, how does the monitoring work, and how will Conservation Outlook work, then please do register. You need to get onto the Congress system and click the register button. And otherwise, just a re-remind, please pick up your guide. Please also detach, if you're not in touch with us already, and this melee of the Congress, we may never see you again after this session. If you'd like to be in touch, please fill out your details or attach your card, find one of us, or go to the Protected Planet Pavilion and just give your details in, because we're trying to get better at sort of managing our whole range of contacts. We won't send you spam, Linda, so but we will, if you're interested, continue to make contact. And please do come to the other events. The purpose of this one was to try to sort of unfold how some of the issues may play out the next few days, the next few months, and the next few years. I'll just close by thanking Penny for stepping up. It's always good to find people that are willing to do the impossible. So thanks Penny for that, and thanks particularly to all of you for finding your way to the best hidden room in the Congress Centre and joining this discussion. And we'll look forward to further discussions through these days. Thank you also to all of our speakers. who put such effort in, and so many common messages out of that as well, which I think we really must respond to. And I lastly, sorry, I had one more announcement. I would just want to ask Crystal Buckley to stand up, who is, it's a rare thing for IUCN to have ICOMOS at its World Conservation Congress. I think it's a super positive thing for us to be able to have the two advisory bodies here to talk about nature culture, how we should work better together. I think it was great, Harold, that you put your finger on that, and then so many other interventions spoke to that need to work together. So also find Crystal and talk to her about that. Sorry, more than 2 points. That's me done. Thank you. In a way it didn't work, and in a way it did.
You had a good chat. Thank you, Benny. You did a very good job.